Hello, welcome Dr. Sushma Singh this side. Today in Unit 30 Civil Society Movements and Grassroots Initiatives, let us continue our topic Civil Society and Empowerment of Marginalized. In developing countries like India, development practices were geared toward the growth and stability. In the 50s and early 60s, with the basic thrust being on industrialization, agricultural modernization, and expansion of infrastructure, education, and mass communication. However, in the backdrop of imbalances, economic development, increased class inequality, gender segregation, and sharp downward mobility of a vast section of the population, along with the increased level of poverty, illiteracy, and ill health, development policy was reoriented in India in the early 70s to incorporate the philosophy of social justice in the development discourse. This reorientation of development with justice envisaged strategies to integrate the hitherto neglected, underprivileged, weaker section, deprived and marginalized group into the mainstream of the society by providing various state-sponsored economic and social benefit to them. The development practice in India has been reoriented once again since the mid-80s to associate the notion of empowerment with development. This reorientation aims at ensuring the basic necessity of life to the people by sharing power with them through institutionalized means, that is law, legal procedures and international obligations. The significant point of departure here is that while the earlier discourses saw the poor people as beneficiaries, the emergent one has recognized them as the partners of development. Accordingly, there has been a new coinage for the term social human development since the mid-80s, with the recognition that the human person is the central subject of development. The context of this reorientation, however, has been globalization and the structural adjustment program that implicitly or explicitly looks for the reduction of the state expenditure in the social sector, health, education, food security, and other basic needs, and the encouragement of the privatization. Thus, the state has emerged as the central to economic and social development, not as a direct provider of growth but as a partner, catalyst, and facilitator. In this context, it is essential to examine the recommendation of the World Development Summit 1995, which talks about the people's initiative, people's empowerment, and strengthening capacity of the people regarding the objectives of development. It is in relation to the above that the World Development Report 1997 emphasized the need for the effective role of the state for social and economic development, but in a new form. In a view of collapse of the command and control economy, fiscal crisis of the welfare states, explosion in humanitarian emergencies in several parts of the world, growing lack of confidence in governance among the marginalized group, endemic corruption within the system, increase in poverty and various dramatic events, especially technological change in the world economy on one hand, and growing discontent of people, manifestation of grassroots mobilization, and increasing pressure of civil society on the other. A redefinition of the state responsibilities has been evolved as a strategy of the solution of some of these problems. It is apparent that within the given perspective of the stable legal framework, strategic selection of the collective action by the state, possible partnership of the state with civil society, and state-sponsored initiatives of civil society to have their own organization, the following three important dimensions have been emerged very clearly. The first, all initiative for the empowerment of marginalized groups should be in accordance with the prescribed rule of the land. Second, the state will selectively co-opt people's initiative as and when required. And the third is the non-government organizations would acquire a significant role to take the burden of the state for the empowerment of the marginalized. The NGO claim to have emerged as equal partners in the development along with the state in most part of the developing country world. There is no denying the fact that a small section of NGO have done substantive work for the social development and empowerment of the marginalized group, opting for various innovative alternative channels of development. The efforts of the Self-Employed Women Association, SEWA, Ahmedabad and the Bankura project of the Center for Women Development Studies CWDC and New Delhi may be cited an example here. However, the experiences of SEWA, CWDC and a few such other institutions do not represent the whole story of NGO activism in India. A good section of NGOs in India have emerged to be the state in disguise in many parts of the country, mostly because of their hierarchical and bureaucratic structures and the style of functioning, conventional outlooks, lack of dynamism, and inability to generate a community of change agent from among the marginalized people. They mostly produce the stereotypes and contribute to the prevailing power structure, though most NGOs start with the promise of inculcating the culture of change agent through their intervention to break the age-old structure of subordination and marginalization. In actual practice, they end up inculcating the culture of target group beneficiaries who are passive recipients of benefits of various development schemes. Because of their dependency on the state for funds and other resources, they reinforce the state structure and in turn the various structures of subordination of marginalization group. Now let us move to the next point. Civil society movements are critical. Though the NGOs began with the philosophy of negation of governmental initiative, they are guided by the economic and social policies of the government. In a system of structural dependency on the state, the NGOs without a committed manpower will provide only a limited space for the creation of alternatives. Many NGOs have even proved their inability to fulfill their commitment to the state. It was in 1996 that Central Council for Advancement of People Action and Rural Technology CAPARD blacklisted around 150 NGOs for not fulfilling their commitment. Though the process of proliferation of NGOs have been very sharp in recent years, their disappearance from the public scene has also been conspicuously marked. To whom they are accountable? To the state, to the people, in the scenario where the NGOs have been unable to either inculcate the culture of change agent or to form a new collective identity of marginalized group at the substantive scale. It is very doubtful whether NGO activism will alone pave the way for the empowerment of marginalized groups. However, notwithstanding all the criticisms and limitations, there is no denying the fact that the civil societies have been able to initiate a process of mobilization at the grassroots. Historical evidence shows that such changes in the pre-existing power structure are possible only through the sustained grassroots mobilization and social movements, selfless interventions of civil societies, and well-articulated alternative policy formulation and their execution with a political commitment for the redressal of power imbalances at the grassroots. After all, marginalized people cannot stand in isolation on an unequal footing compared with the state. Collective mobilization as a long-term political investment will pave the way for the empowerment of the marginalized. Hence, there is a need to view civil society activism not with a vote of negation but constructive criticism. Now let us conclude the unit. In this unit, we discussed the role of civil society in the development and empowerment of the marginalized group in society. In the early part of this unit, we discussed the meaning and dimensions of the civil societies and their linkage with the social movements. The significance of the NGOs as a civil society actor, their relationship with the state and the marginalized people were discussed in detail. In the context of emerging discourse on development with empowerment, the significance of civil societies is critically examined. The unit concludes that as the civil societies have emerged to be an important partner of development along with the state and the people, their roles are to be seen very critically. Here we want to close this lecture and we have come to the end of the unit. Thanks for listening.